Let's talk about guest traffic. I have done a whole bunch of deployments where I took the guest traffic from different locations, then I tunneled that traffic back to a central location to some hardware, and then it was routed out a different firewall or a different firewall interface. This architecture is perfectly fine and it works great because keeps it always kept my guest traffic completely separate from the rest of the corporate traffic, plus it was a central location for me to manage all the IP addresses. What if there's a better way of doing and accomplishing something like that with a lot less effort? Because I still had to worry about a DHCP server for this traffic for all the visitors. I still had to worry about all the IP addressing for the guest traffic, and I also had to worry about, of course, all the routing and all the troubleshooting and all the compliance requirements, hardware, software licensing, all these different things. Nile Zero Trust Fabric offers a feature called Nile Guest Service, and I've written a little bit about it in the past. There's been some additional enhancement to that feature that I will show you actually shortly. The goal is to accomplish this in 30 seconds. Same exact architecture. It will take all the guest traffic from different locations and tunnel it back, but instead of tunneling it back to my data set to a data center of organization, it will actually tunnel that traffic back to a Nile guest pod somewhere, east, west, or depending on where this organization exists or the site exists. Now, there's obviously a benefit of operational efficiency with this because there's no hardware to manage, there's no software licensing to manage, there's no IP addressing to manage and worry about, and all that kind of stuff. However, another cool feature or benefit that this comes with is the security aspect, that it can reduce the cybersecurity insurance for an organization because now you're shifting the responsibility of what a guest or a visitor is doing on that network or what different sites they're accessing from you to Nile. I think that provides great value for a lot of organizations who are having to deal with different compliance requirements. So you can easily shift that responsibility to Nile, and in 30 seconds, you're able to deploy this guest network across 1, 2, 5, 10, or 1,000 locations.
In one of my previous blog posts, I wrote about how to configure the Nile guest service and how it works. In this one, I want to get into some of the options that are available and how they can be utilized in different ways by the organizations. So once I get into the Nile guest pop SSID, I can name it to whatever I want, of course. I'll just leave it at that. This part, by the way, is very simple to configure, takes about 30 seconds or so. Now, how do you authenticate to it? There are different options we provide. So let's look at the very first one, which is a click-through options. User connects and they just connect terms and conditions. They hit OK, accept, and they're good to go. Not much to talk about there. You do want to, if you do want to change the time frame, you can change it to 8 hours, 24 hours, however, right? I'm going to just leave it at 8 hours because I like 8 hours. Next option is email approval. Actually, go back into there, change it to email approval. Over here, there is an option to restrict approvers because obviously you don't want every single approval email going to one person or your admins that are set up in the dashboard and getting bombarded with a whole bunch of different guest approval emails. So what you do is you can click on restrict approvers, toggle that button, and punch in their name. I'm going to use just an example over here. Now, what I can do, well, that's not an email. Now here, what I can do it is I can leave it empty, this geoscope option, which means anytime I have a visitor at any of my location, their approval email will hit this email, this email right here. That can get pretty crazy if you have a lot of sites. So what you can do is you may have a scenario where you have a different person handling each location, like a technical coordinator who's local to the site, or you might have a technical regional coordinator who's handling a group of sites. So you can assign sites to them. Now, anytime somebody is at this location, Nile Lab 01, when that visitor tries to or requests connectivity to the guest service, that request will come to this person and he can approve that request. You can add multiple locations as well in there if you want. You can add this, you can actually add another sponsor in there, and that person can have an overlapping access or completely new access, just depends on how you want to do it. This allows users to get pretty granular on how they want to handle the approval process with different technology coordinators. So I'm going to actually get rid of this and clear this and look at the next process that we have. Next process is access codes. What if somebody does not want to use the email approval process and they want to generate access codes? There are two different ways to generate access codes. One is, let's start with the generic access codes. I can click on the plus sign. I can choose whether I want the code to expire or I can choose it to not expire and so on. I don't have to necessarily put anything in here because it's just a generic access code. I hit save and it will just randomly generate an access code. Good to go. What if I do want to create very specific access codes and not generic access codes? Let's see what that looks like. Save that option. Now, if I click on the plus sign, there you go. So I can now punch in my access code. I can put my guest name, guest email, uh, whether I want the code to expire or not expire. I can add that option in there and hit save. There you go. Now, when a user logs in, they are able to punch in this access code and use this email to connect. Now, there's one more thing in there that I want to talk about that's really important, and a lot of companies like this option. That is enable SSO. So it's already enabled. You can disable it if you want, or you can enable it. Once you enable it, what's going to happen is users will see text towards the bottom of the CAFTA portal showing them basically text saying single sign-on. And that allows users to use their single sign-on credentials to log in. Think BYOD, think users bringing in their personal devices. They want guest access on their personal devices, their phone, because there's no cell phone coverage in there. But you don't want to deal with generating codes, and you also don't want to deal with email approval process for the internal users, but you want to give them visitor access, guest access, with some visibility into them. So SSO integration actually works really well and it's very seamless. I'll show it to you separately in another video on what that process looks like. So this is a little bit about the guest service right over here, right? Different configuration options that you have. What about when you have devices that are headless devices and they are not able to use go through the captive portal process. So MAC address bypass is a very common option. A lot of NAC systems actually offer that feature, but with Nile's Zero Trust Fabric, no additional appliance, device, or software licenses needed because it was all basically built in. For headless devices, all I need to do it is just go to my access management, wireless, and right there, I can simply add my MAC authentication, call it whatever, control or for security. I can add the tag in there if I want, punch in their MAC address, and hit save, and that's it. It'll show up in there. Now that device, when that device connects, it will automatically bypass the captive portal and be able to go out to the internet securely. This video goes over the guest login process, the captive portal. We already assigned the access code and email to a user, and using those credentials, I'm going to show how to log in. I'll just open up the captive portal after connecting to the SSID, and I will enter the credentials that were provided. And of course, if the credentials are wrong, it's not going to work for obvious reasons. Let's correct that and retry it. And there you go. We're good to go. Next, let's see how the SSO login works. Same SSID, and once I connect to it, I'll get the same exact captive portal, but instead of entering my credentials there, I will click on single sign-on towards the bottom. That will take me to my organization's SSO page. I'll enter my username. Well, I'll enter my username, email. Next, I'll enter my credentials. And we're good to go. I'm connected. This will give IT team also visibility into the username that is connected using the guest SSID.